This is part 2 of the 2022 team by team looks at the NFL draft. We're starting with the number 17 pick, the LA Chargers. Ron, we had a question from the first show from Birdie down there. What say you to Birdie?
He's asking about the center Linderbaum, who's from Iowa. He's the number 1 rated center. His draft prop is over under 27.5, but a lot of people think he might fall out of the first round. If the Jets did trade back in, they have picks 35 and 38, so they could use one of them and maybe combine that with a 4th or a 5th, move up ahead of Cincinnati at 31, who would be strongly interested in him. And if he's available, possibly get a trade with Green Bay or with Kansas City. And I think that would be an exceptional move. I agree with Birdie. If they could get Gardner, if they can get an edge rusher and they get Linderbaum, great move for the Jets.
Birdie's always thinking there. Yeah, good follower of ours. Getting back into it, LA Chargers.
The Chargers have been lucky the last few years. They've sat and waited. I think we mentioned this about Derwin James waiting. They got him. They got Slater. They got Herbert. They're going to wait again. Chris Olave is on their radar screen. The big tackle, Davis, is on their radar screen. But the Chargers never let their intentions be known. So most likely it's going to be somebody who you didn't expect that fell out of the top 15 or 16 picks that the Chargers are just going to go and get, much like Baltimore has done for years and years and years. No real intel on the Chargers. Just think that they'll take somebody rated pretty highly, regardless of position, and go with it.
Do they really have any needs, though? Look at it. I mean, they are totally deep for the most part.
You know what their needs are, Ted.
Yeah,
special teams offense, special team defense. Special team punt blockers, special team returners, punters,
wait a minute.
kickers.
Do they not have the right special teamers, or has it been the coaching that's been the issue too? Because remember, every time they've left the wrong guy in there for so many years, he was laughing all the way to the bank.
Let's see what happens this year. But what did we say? Chris and I talked about this before. That cost them 11 games.
There's special needs and special teams. Yes. It always reminds me of those Football Follies videos from the 70s.
Yeah.
We're back to the Saints, hoping not to be the Aints.
Yeah. Again, they're probably not going to stick at 16 and 18, and we're looking at possibly a landing place for a quarterback here, wide receiver or offensive tackle. Smart money's probably on offensive tackle because they lost a couple in this offseason. And there'll be some decently rated first rounders here. But if they want to move up, they're going to have to move way up. They're going to have to go to Seattle at 9, or they're going to have to go all the way up to Carolina at 6, which Carolina should do in a heartbeat if that happens.
And without Alvin Kamara's situation, they got to get a running back, but you're not going to get him early, right?
No, running back should be devalued. Kamara is one of those that has 3-down ability and he can pass catch. So those are the kind of backs that should go in the late 20s to, let's say, 40 or whatever. But I think New Orleans should look in another direction. Interesting that Kamara's case has been postponed until August. So we don't have a definitive answer as to whether he's going to be suspended, what's going to happen, and so on.
Are we seeing a running back in the first round, Ron?
No, we should not see a running back in the first round. But I do need to tell you that Breece Hall has gotten a lot of love since the end of our first show. His number was 43.5, and it's down in some places between 36.5 and 39.5 draft slot now. So you could look at him possibly at the early part of the second round, but I don't think there'll be a first rounder.
And it was only a few hours between shows. So how much did what we say affect what's going on in Vegas today, Ron?
Well, I don't know how many views we got, but the quarterbacks are not getting any love now. Those quarterbacks which started out at over-under draft slot 9.5, they're going 12.5, pick it all the way up to 16.5. And if you want to say over, you're going to lay some juice. It's finally the realization that maybe this isn't a quarterback year.
So will Philly take their 19th pick, or do you look that's going to be shuffled also?
I think they take, we don't know which one, but they're going to trade up for one of them. That would be my guess. Now, maybe they'll trade down with the other. Philly is one of those teams that likes to stockpile picks year by year. They already got an extra 2023 from the Saints when the Saints moved into this round twice. So Philly would be better off getting a linebacker in this spot or replenishing their offensive line. Their offensive line is aging, as is the defensive line. They have enough bodies there now, but if you're planning and Howie Roseman tends to look toward the future. Again, we can't rule out wide receiver because they've kicked the tires on so many of them. But I would look at the lines.
Yeah, and this spot also, this is where we're talked earlier. A lot of the guys that they're the best receivers are going to be going between maybe 18 and 30, right?
Yep. The start should be somewhere around it could be start at 8 with Atlanta. Yeah. The Jets are heavily interested at 10. And Washington, again, since we've last talked, Washington has been almost locked into Drake London. It's like, this is our guy. Now, I don't know if that can change or whatever, because Drake London figures to be the second or third wide receiver off the board. So they really like him.
By the way, Chris, for your Lions, just watching NFL Network for a few minutes.
Hutchinson signed.
Yeah, Hutchinson.
Yeah.
He's there. He says, hey, how special would it be to play for the hometown team, obviously, right?
Oh, I thought you were talking about they extended a contract of Hutchinson.
No, Hutchinson from Michigan.
They extended the contract for Hutchinson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Pittsburgh.
News. Yes, Pittsburgh.
What are they doing over there?
Well, Mike Tomlin is famous for having dinner with these draftees, and he had dinner with a whole bunch of quarterbacks, and he has worked out every single quarterback in the top 7 of the quarterbacks, all the way down to Zappe, I think. Wow. I don't know if he worked out Carson Strong. So it's basically plus 120 that Pittsburgh takes a quarterback. The question is, which one is it going to be? I don't think Pickett fits here, even though he's a local hometown product from University of Pittsburgh. So you have to figure that in. I think Malik Williams. Listen to what Tomlin said in the offseason. He said the quarterback position has become much more mobile. And when Tomlin speaks, he actually is a very straight shooter. If he says something, that's what he believes, and you can count on it. And Malik Willis fits that the best. And Desmond Ridder cannot be taken out of the equation. I know it seems high at 20, but I think Willis or Ridder would be my favorites. And I do think Pittsburgh is going after a quarterback in this spot.
What's the over-under on how much weight that Tomlin gained from all those dinners with the quarterback?
He loves to go face-to-face, and these quarterbacks rave about having dinner with him. I mean, he's a guy people love to play for. Your friend Aaron Rodgers put out a few tweets down the road about wanting to play for him.
So if Pickett's there available, Willis is off the board. Are they kind of backed into having to take Pickett, or do you think they could take a Ridder, or what? You don't like Ridder to go that high, technically, do you?
Yeah, technically, Ridder is the back of the first round guy. He's more in the Detroit range, but Ridder has elusive skills. He ran for 2,200 yards in college. So we know he fits Tomlin's idea there. He improved each year. He has what's called, quote, a 4-year body of work, which used to be a Tomlin quote, before he started taking some junior eligibles. So he fits the profile. The question is, can he throw deep? Can he look off the first read to the second read? He does a lot of things well. And I heard somebody today say that maybe he was restricted by the Cincinnati Bearcat offense in college, but we don't know that. I think Ridder's in the discussion.
His Wonderlic was below 20, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, not perfect.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Oh, who's next here?
New England is next. They're open for business. This is the trade down spot. New England will accept people who want to move ahead of Green Bay for somebody like a wide receiver, or maybe move ahead of Green Bay for an offensive lineman because they're down a little bit. They had injury problems there. Move ahead of New England loves to trade down. They're not that interested in picking where they are supposed to pick. If a player falls to them, maybe they go after him, a defensive lineman or somebody like that. I had a tough time slotting Purdue edge rusher George Karlaftis. And Chris first alerted me to this about what about his number, 17 and a half. And I looked at it, got back to you and said, you know something, he doesn't appear to be going in the first 17 or 18 or 19 or 20. It's possible New England is the first place that he could land at 21. And a lot of people are now thinking that he could land in the back end of the 20s. But he's kind of a New England player. They drafted Chase Winovich, another Big Ten player, and then they let him go. They traded him this year, so maybe they could get him. But I think New England would rather get some kind of trade up, and Tennessee at 26 is a likely candidate.
Have they done anything on the offseason this year? Obviously, last year they were the number one spenders, I believe, but this year they've been quiet, haven't they?
Yes, they were out of character last year, and they're back in character this year.
Exactly.
A couple of trades and not much else.
But they have their needs.
Yeah,
The more picks, the merrier.
Oh, Green Bay! How exciting for me!
Yeah. Well, for those who follow Green Bay, I apologize for the 6 dead frog comment that's in there, but basically we all know what happened in 2020 trading up for Jordan Love when they're one player away from making the Super Bowl. And you can argue that last year they were one player away from making the Super Bowl and they blew it again. So wide receiver and O-line, 22 and 28. And if I were Green Bay, I'd stop being passive and I'd go up and get a wide receiver that I want, or go up and get an offensive lineman. You don't need 10 picks in this draft. You just need 5 good ones.
You talk about trade up to get one, or make sure you do get one at this pick.
They'll get a good one here, right?
Yeah, you can get a good one. You can get Burks out of Arkansas, who's been lightly talked about. Of all the draft props I've seen, Burks is 23 and a half, and he has never moved off that. Yeah, and everybody's moved, but he hasn't. It's just been 23 and a half, 23 and a half, 23 and a half. Folks, he's my number 2 rated wide receiver right now, which could change because, I believe in person team fit.
So he's
but
behind
right now,
you.
Burks is Trevon Burks of Arkansas.
Okay.
My 2nd rated wide receiver at the present time.
No, behind who's your number 1 pick?
Number 1 right now is still Garrett Wilson of Ohio State, and likely to go number 1. I have Drake London a little bit further behind, which makes sense. If he goes to the Washington or the Jets, I'm not going to raise him.
So, but is Olave, we talked about it, and it says here he's the perfect fit for the Packers. We've talked about it a few times. Do you trade up to make sure you get him, or you just settle for whoever's there?
I would trade up to get him. He's my number 3 on the board, and what a great fit for this team.
Okay.
Arizona, they've got their problems with Murray right now. I have a funny feeling that I don't know when that gets solved, but I think it's causing problems there. How do you see that, and how do you see it affecting the draft?
Murray, they're trying to smooth the waters there. So I'm just going to operate under the assumption that everything's going to be fine with him. You look at the draft props for Arizona, wide receivers plus 300, and that's the favorite. So nobody knows. And if you look and uncover the sources that I try to uncover, they're in all different directions. Defensive line plus 300, cornerback plus 430, linebacker plus 430. It's all over the place. I've got a couple players that they may be looking at. There's a Penn State guy who had freakish workouts as an edge rusher. His last name is Mafe, M-A-F-E, if I'm pronouncing it right. And he is a kind of size speed guy that they've gone after the last 2 drafts. But I also like Burks again. And we talked about him just recently. They lost Christian Kirk, mainly because Christian Kirk cost Jacksonville $72 million. But Burks is better than Kirk, and he's built the same way, in my opinion. And I think he would be a good addition to Arizona, even though I wouldn't go in that direction because Arizona has other needs on my board.
He works cheap. That's a nice thought there, and compared to Kirk. But hey, well, what about the Kingsbury situation? Do you try and build for his strengths, or are you just trying to do the best you can for this team, and he either makes it as a head coach or doesn't?
Yeah, it's a dilemma because they won a lot of games last year, but they didn't close the season well. I love their GM, and he's very good at picking guys that are Kingsbury guys. So you can't fault the GM for picking the guys the coach wants. But it's like we said with the other in the other segment. Basically, if you have an offensive coach like Kingsbury, I'd load up this team with the best defensive players I can, because you need the play to dictate what happens because the coaching isn't there.
The Rams ate them up, sadly enough. I had Arizona against them twice, and painful to watch that porous defense last year.
It was also hard to watch Arizona without Hopkins, though, too.
Yeah,
They were not the same team without. As soon as he left, their offense was dead.
Yeah, that's true.
Very true.
Dallas Cowboys have been a little quiet this off season.
Yeah, very, very quiet.
In a bad way.
And it's Jerry Jones. He's got his fingers on everything, and his son as well. This looks offensive line to me, because they're down two. They lost two really good ones. They pride themselves on the offensive line. Dak Prescott, they don't want to go through another injury situation with him. They are down a wide receiver, but I think there's enough good ones that you can get in the second round. I think they go offensive line, and so does the betting public.
And OL for them a few years ago was their absolute strength. One of the great offensive lines ever a couple of years ago. And everybody was saying when Tony Romo was still there, but all of a sudden Dak was taking over. Oh, Dak's the guy. No, it was the old lines that were the guys, and they're not there anymore. So they need to do something about that to really beef this team up.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
I hope.
It's weird when you get to 25 in Buffalo, because to me, cornerback is an extreme need, but there's so much talk about Breece Hall to Buffalo. And if they really want Breece Hall, then they need to trade back, and somebody moves up for a quarterback, or somebody moves up for their prize person, maybe a cornerback, because now we're talking the time of draft from 25 on, when it's cornerback city, maybe safety as well. You're going to see defensive backs from 25 through, let's see, who's 32? The Lions? I don't know about the Lions, but 25 to 31, the Lions could go safety. So defensive back is in play right now, beginning at 25. And that's where I think Buffalo should go. But they're really looking at Breece Hall hard. They slipped him in just at the wire to get a private workout with him.
But you said no running backs in the first round. So how does that jive?
That means Buffalo should just say, I'm going to trade back. How many people are in contention for Breece Hall? Not many. Let's trade back and get some value, because it's in fact, if I were Buffalo, I'd rather trade up in the second round to get Breece Hall and get my cornerback now, because if they wait to the second round to get cornerback back where they're drafting, they're not going to get one of the top 7 or 8. So
yeah, they make
if you want to
sense.
satisfy both, get the cornerback now, move up for the running back.
They've got to shore up some more stuff on defense. That's got to be a higher priority at this point.
Yeah.
Good.
Tennessee.
Yeah, and Tennessee has itchy trigger fingers, so they're probably going to move up. Who they're going to move up for, it could be offensive line. That's the favorite, plus 190 for Tennessee. Wide receiver, which there's some talk about, plus 340. If they want a wide receiver, they definitely have to move up. If they want an offensive lineman in the top 4, they're going to have to move way up. But Tennessee's not afraid to do that. They've generally drafted good players, but they've also drafted some guys with injury risk. Each of the last 3 years, they've drafted at least 1, if not 2 guys that have had injury risks. And I wish they would stop that, because if you're going to have thin drafts, you need everybody on board. You need all hands on deck. If you're going to draft 12 people, yeah, take some injury risks like San Francisco used to do. But if you're going to draft 5 or 6, they've got to play.
Now, Ryan Tannehill is the big question mark with them, because they have a pretty damn good team this year. And the question is he really good enough to get them over the hump to be an elite squad? and it's questionable at best. But the OL, if it's really, really good, that's got to help his cause.
Yeah, I would agree. And something you mentioned, Ryan Tannehill, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they go for quarterback maybe day 2, that they groom somebody behind Tannehill.
Yeah, but that groom would be a second stringer, according to some guy named Ron, who says most of these guys are going to be career second stringers.
Yep.
So good luck.
Good luck.
Tampa Bay, you said that they may move around their pick also.
Yeah, Tampa Bay should have moved last year. They had all 22 people back. They should have traded. They should have 9 picks instead of 7 or so in this draft, because they weren't going to use anybody last year. And now they're all in on Brady again, and they don't have the extra draft capital. So if they see somebody they want, they'll probably go get them. They lost some very important offensive linemen. One retired early, Marpet. He just said, enough is enough. I don't want to have a health risk and stuff like that. They lost another one to free agency. They want to keep Brady healthy. So I think this is offensive lineman.
Yeah, and you mentioned the question marks around a Gronkowski and a tight end, which would really help, obviously, Mr. Brady, whatever the situation. Is there a guy that you really see fits here or fairly early?
For tight end, no. The earliest I would go would be Trey McBride around the mid to late 40s. So it's not right for them here. And they also have Ndamukong Suh, that situation, and a lot of age on the defensive line. So they could be doing some succession planning on the defensive line as well.
What is the Suh situation?
Unsigned.
Okay.
So
what's it look like they're going to do?
Last year, they fit him under the salary cap. If they both sides come to an agreement, they'll do that. Suh's been pretty adamant that he likes to play with Tom Brady. He would have been gone for sure if Brady didn't come back. So probably 70-30 he signs, but just in case.
Good.
Here we go. Green Bay again.
Well, I think we covered Green Bay. I think let's go to KC, because this is one of those you get suckered into. We know they lost Tyreek Hill. We know they lost another wide receiver. They lost 3 wide receivers altogether to other teams by choice or by free agency. So everybody says wide receiver will be first, and it's basically about even money. But if if Kansas City stayed at 29 and 30, they could mess up everybody by taking the wide receiver at 30 and take somebody else at 29. So if you like another position, cornerback, for example, is 5-1. Safety is 8.5-1. And we know they lost, or they're going to lose, Mathau. He hasn't signed with anybody yet, I don't believe. Has he signed with anybody?
No. Matthew.
Yeah, he hasn't signed, has he?
I don't think so. No, I haven't heard of it.
But I don't think he's coming back. They've said their goodbyes,
right.
So they could use somebody. We know there's 2 things about KC with one of their picks. Maybe I'm pretty sure they'll go wide receiver with one of them. With the other one, they could go defensive line. There's a Georgia guy named Wyatt who has some off-field issues. That doesn't bother KC. So they're okay with off-field issues. And then they could go for speed, because that's what their team is built on. They took Nick Bolton last year. All he did was run about a 4.4 something as a linebacker, and he made every play possible. He was fantastic for them. KC, Andy Reid, they reinvented the use of speed. So that's probably where they're going to go. The other thing is they have 12 picks in this draft. There's no way, we've talked about this, there's no way 12 people make Kansas City's roster. So they could be trading up at, even in the first round, and I would endorse that.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, they could pile in a lot of nice picks and move up and get somebody that really fits better.
Exactly.
But I think we all agreed previously that at first it looks like Kansas City might take a 1-year step back, but they're freeing up that cap space and getting all these draft picks is going to really put them in a great position going forward.
They should be one of the deepest rosters in the league, any way you look at it.
Cincinnati.
So this is interesting too, because, as I've said with you guys and on another podcast, I jumped the gun before free agency and took O-line as being their number one area of need. We talked about it. Of course, it's the number one area of need. Everybody knows that. But they signed two starters and one who could put in several minutes in terms of their offensive line. So the need switches to cornerback. I think Cincy's aware of it. I'm aware of it. It's plus 340, as Chris is aware. And we went ahead and made a deal there, said, yeah, let's take the plus 340. I think if you were asking me what's the favorite position that they would take at 31, it would be cornerback at probably plus 150 and offensive line at probably plus 200.
Wow. And the
so
quarterback,
I think I'm getting value.
And the cornerback of your choice is?
The cornerback of my choice, I think if there's a cornerback run, they won't have their choice at 31. But I like a more traditional cornerback to them. It's Elam of Florida. He's probably considered by most people out there as a pick that will go in the 30 to 37, 38 range. His over-under is about 35 and a half. They could go for Gordon, who's considered 28 to 32, 33 guy. There's about 5 cornerbacks that are in play between, like we were talking about, 26 or 25 to 31. So they're not going to be picky at 31. They're probably not going to move up. Cincinnati generally doesn't trade up. The only caveat to that is Tyler Linderbaum, if he did drop all the way to 31, would be hard to pass up for Cincinnati. He's just built to play offensive center for them.
And I think the Lions are in play here for the Yahtzee version of pick a quarterback or cornerback, whichever cornerback's available there. Wouldn't you think at 32?
32. We talked about this with Kent Matt Baum when we had that fascinating show about his relative athletic scores. We put him on spot as GM, and he did a great job. Wide receiver, edge rusher, safety. And I think this is a great spot for a safety. You've got Lewis Sign out there. You've got Dax Hill, who might go a little earlier, but if he's there, you've got a safety there. They could go quarterback. They've got picks 32 and 34. So if they come away with those positions, wide receiver, safety, and edge rusher at number 2, that would be perfect. If they want a quarterback, okay, this would be the spot for somebody. Probably they don't get Lewis or Pickett. They may or may not be in play for Ritter. If Ritter's gone, I wouldn't go for Matt Corral in this spot. And this is that spot where if everybody thinks Detroit's going to take a quarterback, that some teams are going to try to move up ahead of them and get that 5th-year option on a quarterback, which we've talked offline is not that important.
Well, I noticed a stat in between the first show. Only it's like around a little bit less than 60% of these first-round quarterbacks are even having their 5th-year option extended. So it's highly, and that's taking quite the gamble to, move up to 30, 31, 32 for a 5th-year option when, only half the time they're exercised anyway.
That's a good point. But Ron, why would you pick any of these quarterbacks if you're Detroit? You've got enough needs. What are you picking a potential future second, a backup quarterback when you've got tons of stuff you got to add to that roster? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think interestingly enough, you could get a good cornerback at this spot or any of these 26 to 32, and that 5th-year option might be much more valuable because in my opinion, cornerback is the hardest position to play, in my opinion, given the rules favoring offenses. You can't touch the guy.
So we've got 8 teams, 25% of the league, not having a first-round pick. We've got one slide here to talk about some of the teams. What are your thoughts on how some of these teams can get themselves in the first round?
It's going to be interesting. Cleveland is at 44. They could sacrifice a pick in 2023 to move up, and historically, they wouldn't be afraid to do that. I'm not sure they have a first rounder, though, because of the Watson situation. So Cleveland is kind of a trade-up team. San Francisco, if they swing a deal for Deebo Samuel, or if they want to part with their 2023 pick, I think San Francisco is a first-round kind of trade-up possibility. Denver's at 64. I think they will move up, but there's no way they can get to the first round at 30, from 64. So you might see, I mean, it's unprecedented to have 8 teams not have a first round pick. And probably a lot of them are still not going to have a first round pick, but you could see them move up early in the second round because there's a lot of people that are going to fall out of the first round, and you're going to have an evening to think about it. And you're going to have 10 guys that everybody's going to say, wow, they are first round talent, and there they are. And they're going to be looking at Jacksonville at 33. They're going to be looking at Detroit at 34 and trying to trade into those spots.
Yeah, it's come up in a few of our previous shows, but the San Francisco situation is very different. I mean, now with Debo, it really puts a cloud over everything. But Jimmy G's value has gone way down, half because of his health. We don't know about the shoulder. You got to assume it's going to be okay, but you don't know. How much is he worth if you trade him on a draft day right now when he's just got an uncertain future?
Yeah, I don't think they're not going to be able to move him until July after he's recovered from his surgery. So I think that's one of the major problems with him.
Yeah. So what quarterbacks besides Baker? I'm assuming Baker is going to be dealt somewhere because they got to unload him. They can't hold on to him for much longer.
Yeah, Baker to Seattle or Baker to Carolina is a possibility, and it seems to me that deal should be done by the end of day 2 of the draft, but we'll see.
Good.
By the way, you're scrolling this. If you do want to look at the full article, you can look at my Twitter handle or go to the Odds Breakers website and find the article and agree, disagree, poke holes into it, whatever you want to do.
What do you like with Vegas, what they have done to this point besides the obvious Davante Adams and where they stand moving forward with their first picks in the third round?
Yeah, and they're not going to be able to do much, but they were very active in the draft. They added probably 7 starters to their roster overall, a lot of defensive players. I know there's chatter out there that Darren Waller to Green Bay, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You pick up Adams and then you dump the guy that you've thrown the most targets to.
I know, it makes no sense.
That would make sense. Would make great sense for Green Bay.
Yeah.
So
don't hold your breath.
Yeah. The draft is in Vegas, but it's pretty quiet in Vegas for the team.
It is.
Yeah.
I love that. There's your teams right there. The Giants, Houston, Seattle, and Atlanta that could move into the first round. I still think Atlanta needs to get as many picks as possible, and it's a deep draft. Stop worrying about the perfect guy because one guy's not going to fix them. 12 guys might not fix them.
Well, you and I might think that way, but Atlanta never does.
Good luck.
I'm not saying that I would do that with Atlanta, but that's a different story. So I'm sure you guys have some final thoughts on the draft too. So here's mine, and then you guys tell me what you think. I do think Ritter is going a little earlier than people think. There's just a lot to like about him. He tested well. He interviewed well. He has limitations. I'm not saying he's going to be perfect. I called him Andy Dalton light, which isn't. It is a compliment because Andy Dalton had a fantastic first 5 to 7 years with Cincinnati, with a team that just was so self-destructive. Yet he got them to the playoffs all those times, and then penalty after penalty got him out. So I think there's upside for Ritter. How about this kind of, let's think outside of the box. Carolina can't find a trade partner. They take an offensive tackle, whether it be Cross, whether it be somebody else that falls at pick 6. Then they trade their 2023 pick because, as you guys said, Matt Rule is on the hot seat. And then they go back into the first round and they take a quarterback. So they get OT and quarterback. I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, but we talked earlier, what quarterback's going to help them?
Well, they think it could be Malik Willis, for example.
He's going to help them now? Matt Rule will be back in college by the time he's helping.
Yeah. And maybe better for it.
It makes 0 sense in my brain, but what do I know?
I'm throwing it out there.
I know.
We talked about earlier that, and I didn't put it up there, but the the question that we started the show with was really good. 35 and 38 for the Jets. They could go and then instead of sacrificing O-line, edge, and cornerback, they get two of those three plus their wide receiver. And then Stingley, he's really being steamed right now in terms of the odds. What if Houston pulls a curveball and takes him over Gardner at 3? Because none of us know what Houston's going to do. So, I mean, that could cause one of these offensive linemen, maybe Thibodeau, maybe even Walker, maybe somebody outside of the top 5 that you didn't think was going to be out of the top 5. So Houston at 3 could really change things.
My biggest question to you, Ron, is what do you think is going to happen for a couple of teams that just need a little bit more depth in their roster to become a much, much better club? And they've got the chance to do it this year more than ever.
Green Bay has the draft clout just like the last 2 years. And if they do it right, they're in the Super Bowl. But we've seen them backfire. They've been too passive. That's the first team that comes to mind. Chris mentioned Kansas City, or both of you mentioned Kansas City not needing that much with 12 picks. If they turn 12 picks into 6, that's not a problem this year because
they're great.
They've got so much talent surrounding Mahomes. If they could beef up the defensive line, make up for their cornerback and safety losses through free agency, where they're going, they're still going to be so formidable that it's going to be tough to beat them.
Yeah, and I'm still looking at the Chargers too because I love their roster. If they pick up a couple of really good players that are going to play and be a difference maker the first year, they could really be special.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of confidence. I don't have a lot of confidence in New Orleans this year. That move with Philadelphia was kind of goofy, and just the whole changeover, everything seems so discombobulated there. How do you feel about their chances of doing the right thing?
Not good, because they don't draft enough people, and now they don't have Peyton in the room to either get the right person because he had tremendous impact in the draft, or to coach them up when they come because they have a defensive-minded staff. This is a team that could fall. I don't know how you guys think, and we're going to have future shows on this anyway, but there's 2 teams that stand out as being the worst in football right now. And that would be Houston under Lovie Smith and their constant revolving door of people, and Atlanta with no idea how to rush the passer, defend the pass, and without Matt Ryan. I can't think of a third team that I would put with those 2. Any thoughts?
Well, Jacksonville, they don't do anything better. Obviously they've already improved somewhat, but they're overspending on guys that are not going to be giant difference makers. Yeah. So they still need to beef up a really, really good draft here.
I actually think Jacksonville, they're spending way too much money in the wrong ways, but I really think that they're going to be a lot better than they were last year. I think they played dead for the coach. They were hit by the injury bug. You had the top-notch quarterback that didn't get any proper coaching. He will certainly get great coaching this year. And you've got a whole new system in there. I think there'll be some optimism there. And plus they've added tools.
Yeah, but if their O-line is not greatly improved, all of that won't matter.
And that brings us back to the number 1 pick with the team torn, with the coach wanting the offensive line and then the 2 edge rushers in there. That's the most important point. If you can't keep Lawrence upright, what's the point? Because they're not ready and they don't have a tight end. Will they actually draft a viable tight end? They just haven't done well in the draft, but if they do well in the draft, then they really do separate from those bottom 2 teams.
Guys, how about last-minute prop bets and anything that looks like a standout as we head into that final day?
I like the Malik to be the first quarterback drafted. I played that earlier today. Ron thought it was just more or less on par value at -150, but I saw the Wonderlic test come out with Pickett way down there at the bottom, and I just said, I don't know. I think Malik's got a little bit of an edge with that.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I just couldn't pull the trigger myself on that one. Instead, I just thought that before the juice started going up and up and up, just play the quarterbacks over. They're not going 10.5 and they're not going 12.5. And if they do, then I'll have a thing or two or three to say in my draft report, but it just isn't the right year for quarterback. And I think that's why now between shows, we've seen the juice start to go up on this as everything crystallizes.
Yeah,
Vegas takes down their props Wednesday at 5 p.m.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
24 hours before.
Okay. What about quarterbacks for next year? How many do you think, looking way in advance, that are going to be first rounders next year, as opposed to who knows what's going to happen this year?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because last May I made a bet that there would be under 5.5 quarterbacks in this draft. And obviously there's not going to be anywhere close to 5.5, because we just had that fantastic, we had 5 quarterbacks go in the first 15 picks last year. Yeah. With Mac Jones going 15th. So everybody was quarterback Henry. And then Spencer Rattler of Oklahoma was the top one, and Sam Howell was second. And look, they're not even in the picture anymore. So these things change. If you ask me right now, I think we're looking at 4.5 as the number, 5 probably. You got 3 right away, and there's 2 people not even being mentioned that I really like. So I think it's going to be a banner year for quarterbacks next year. And I think then when the dust settles and Matt Ryan's 1 year older and Carson Wentz has had his year in Washington and everybody's thrilled with him or not thrilled with him, and some of these other guys that, they're just bridge quarterbacks in New Orleans or Tampa Bay loses Tom Brady to his 13th retirement, then basically you've got a bunch of quarterbacks that are going to be more ready to come in than they were this year. And let me point out one other thing from this year. None of these 5 quarterbacks that are being mentioned would have been in the top 5 last year. They would have been 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Willis, no way. He didn't have the number of reps that the other people had. Pickett, not a chance. Corral, no way. They don't have the height and the measurables. So these 5 would fall below the 2021 draftees.
Would they fall like after pick 30?
Yes.
All of them.
All of them.
Wow.
What does that tell you? But it's also, we always talk about fit and needs, right? Yeah. So now you got teams that still need a quarterback, but very few of them will fit. It's certainly not as a starter. You're looking at more backups for the near in the next 2 years, let's say. Who's going to start out of this group? Who's going to really do something? So I think the teams like Detroit and Carolina and some of those, wait till next year and deal with what you can beef up now on the other positions.
I agree. So that just about summarizes this. We'll be back next week. We appreciate everybody joining. Please feel free to subscribe. And thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ron. We'll see you guys next week.
You got it. Enjoy the draft.